This video discusses topics that may be disturbing to some viewers. It discusses cases of missing and/or murdered victims whose case was solved using forensic genetic genealogy. Viewer discretion is advised.
17-year-old Carla Walker sat in a Fort Worth parking lot with her boyfriend Rodney McCoy at the Brunswick Ridge Bowl. It was February 17, 1974, and her and Rodney had just been at the Valentine's Day dance at Western Hills High School. Carla and her boyfriend stopped by a local bowling alley quickly to use the bathroom. At some point, an unknown person jerked open the passenger side door of Rodney's car and, using a gun, threatened Rodney. At that point, Rodney was beat and pistol whipped until he fell unconscious. Rodney's last memory of Carla was at that point. He remembers Carla being grabbed and taken by a suspect that he described as a white male roughly 5 feet 10 inches. Rodney said the last thing he remembers hearing is Carla screaming for help. As soon as Rodney regained consciousness, Carla was nowhere to be seen. He immediately drove to Carla's house to inform her parents of the attack. Police were called and searched the area where Rodney had last seen Carla. Her purse and the magazine clip from the weapon used to hit Rodney was the only things recovered from the scene of the attack. Within 3 days, sadly, Carla would be found in a culvert in Lake Benbrook. She had been both beaten, strangled, and had also been sexually violated. Her face and neck was covered in scratches and bruises. Her autopsy would also produce a toxicology report that showed that she had been injected with morphine. Police were able to obtain samples of fluids from the crime scene. They were also able to preserve her clothing. For nearly half a century, her case would sit unresolved, though all leads were looked into, as well as the DNA testing that was available throughout those years. In the spring of 2020, Carla's story was featured on an Oxygen show that stars Paul Holt. If Paul's name sounds familiar, besides his show on Oxygen, he also had a large part in the identification of the Golden State Killer. Paul would end up connecting the Fort Worth police to Othram Labs. Othram is one of the leading DNA profiling laboratories. Within a week, the DNA analysis was done, and forensic genetic genealogists were able to give Fort Worth police a name of a lead or person of interest. Police then interviewed the person of interest, and he agreed to provide a cheek swab. The matching was enough to arrest the person of interest and charge him with a crime. To everyone's surprise, it was Glenn Samuel McCurley, who was 77 years old at the time of his arrest and was charged with Carla's murder. Why was it shocking to police that it was him? Well, to anyone who had worked on the case, it was strange, cause he was interviewed by police at the time of the murder. He was questioned because he had purchased a .22 auger pistol that used the same type of magazine that was found at the scene of the abduction. During questioning, he had said the gun was stolen from his truck and he no longer had possession of it. He was willing and agreed to take a polygraph in 1974, and to everyone's surprise, Glenn McCurley passed the polygraph, and so he was no longer considered a person of interest at that time. After Glenn McCurley's trial began in August of 2021, the evidence that the state provided to the court included the .22 Ruger pistol that McCurley had claimed was stolen in 1974. It was found concealed inside of his home. 3 days into his trial, the suspect changed his plea to guilty and was sentenced to life in prison. He will not be eligible for parole until March 21, 2029. His last known reason as to why he decided to change his plea was because he had enough hounding. I am glad that Glenn Samuel McCurley has been identified as the suspect of this case. I am sorry to Rodney, Carla's boyfriend, as this would be extremely traumatic at the time it happened, as well as for years and years after. I truly hope that he is doing good. May Carla be able to finally rest, as her killer has been named and sentenced.